What's going on, everybody? It's Wednesday, and last week I took a serious approach to my Wednesday video, and I put off for a little while all of your questions, and I genuinely look forward to answering them with my opinions. Again, I don't have the right answer, I don't have the wrong answer, I have just kind of my thoughts on it. And this first question, which we're going to get into here in just a second, will definitely have difference of opinions, and that's okay. But the beauty of YouTube, of friendships, of communities, is to share opinions and give ideas. And again, I've talked for many months about how I love sports talk radio. I used to listen to a lot of political talk radio because I find different opinions interesting. And this is just a place I share mine, and I welcome you to share yours in the comments. I also welcome you to ask me follow-up questions to things, or questions about other topics that you've not heard me talk about that you would be interested in hearing me talk about. So that's this whole Wednesday Q&A thing. It's just an opportunity for us to connect and you to hear my thoughts. I certainly do not claim to be right on everything. I certainly do not claim to be the person with all the answers. I'm just a guy sharing my current opinion, which has the potential to change over time. So let's take a look at this week's first question.
I have a John Unitas card with a slight ding. I'm considering trying Kurt's card care on it. Would you be offended if I do that?
Would I be offended? Would I be offended if you do that? Now, this is a topic that's gotten a lot of attention lately. A lot of YouTubers have been talking about this as vintage cards, especially vintage cards, have been having a lot more talk about the restoration or the altering process, depending on your opinion. And, I've kind of thrown my hat out there. Well, first of all, I don't know, 7 or 8 months ago, I did a video on this. I shared it fairly recently. I reshared it about Kurt's card care and where is the line drawn. And I think everybody has a difference of opinion on where is it okay to do this, but anything past this is over the line. And, John Mangini came out with some strong statements against it, which I totally respect. And then Blue Jacket 66 Dave came out and said, I challenge Mangini to a debate on this, to a conversation on this. And then, that kind of turned into, and then he asked, hey, Greg, will you moderate this? And I'm like, of course. So we've had fun. Mangini especially has made some videos where he's like training for it and he's like working out and stuff. And it's super fun. And then I did, a trailer for it. If you haven't seen that, I posted that a few days ago, just all in fun. Those two guys are friends. Those two guys completely respect each other's opinions. And I'm just excited to be in the same live stream with them, which is going to actually be a week from today. It will be at 9 p.m. Eastern time on January 31st. So I don't want to tip my hand too much because I'm supposed to be a moderator. So I definitely understand some of Dave's opinions, especially when it comes to his Joe Jackson card, which he did an awesome video about his Cracker Jack Joe Jackson card and kind of, restoration with that. And he also collects ultra rare cards. And so sometimes having the card, whether it be altered or unaltered or in good condition or bad condition, just having the card is pretty cool. One of the things that a lot of people say about restoration or alteration of cards is, well, people clean their car all the time before they sell it. And people restore art, and people restore cars, and people restore books. So what's the difference? What's the difference if people are restoring cards or not? Well, I don't think in that case for me, we're not comparing apples to apples. When you buy a restored car at an auction, it is listed as a restored card that's up for auction. If you buy a restored book, it's not listed as an all original book. The all original book would be worth significantly more than a restored book. Art that's restored, it is like dated, and it is like, there is information about where it was restored, how it was restored. When you buy comic books that were restored, it says on the label that it was restored. And that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is people are making alterations or restorations, and they're not sharing that there was an alteration. If I sold a vintage car that I restored, and I said it was all original, and I didn't restore it, it was all original, but it was actually restored, that would be fraud. Wouldn't that be fraud? If I claimed something was all original, but it was actually restored and I sold it as all original, that would not be, it would not be what it is. And by presenting something as something that it's not is misleading, which is fraud. So, I mean, the people that say, hey, you should be able to use, Kurt's Card Care Kit and soak it and put solutions on it and press it and remove wrinkles. Okay. And are we then going to tell people that happened, or are we going to act like that never happened and it just looked that way when we bought it? Because those are two different things. If we were to as a group agree that, you can restore cards and then they're listed as restored, and people say you clean cards just like you clean cars, or you restore cards just like you restore books, but you just have to, that has to be part of the process. When you buy a house, right, you have to have certain things you have to disclose. Otherwise, if you don't disclose them, you could be sued. I don't see a huge difference here. So that's my first thing is, okay, maybe it's okay to restore things, but I don't think, as my opinion stands right now, I don't think it's okay to restore things, but then not disclose that it was restored. Now, in addition to this, would I be offended? I wouldn't be offended. I don't think I would be offended. Let me turn the tables. If the Mona Lisa was damaged, okay, let's just say that the Mona Lisa had a crack in it, and you decided to buy a Crayola restoration kit and fill in the crack that popped out with some color so it was less noticeable, and to the naked eye it looked a little bit nicer. Would I be offended by you doing that to the Mona Lisa? I don't know if I'd be offended, but I wouldn't understand why you would be doing that. I would say, well, why are you taking a Crayola crayon to the Mona Lisa? Why would you do that? And people say, well, that's different. And with the Mona Lisa, they would have professional restorers do it. And I would say, well, yes. And number one, they would be the top end professionals doing it. And it would be documented that it was restored and what was restored. So if the Mona Lisa ever came up for sale, which it likely won't, it would come up for sale and it would be documented what was done, who did it. It wouldn't be undisclosed, right? So I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between disclosing restorations and not disclosing restorations. And then that brings a whole nother thing in. And this was a big part of Mangini's point when he talked about it is, well, if PSA and SGC and BGS and all these companies are supposed to be experts on card conditions, but they can't detect that there were restorations that took place, then what's the point of getting the card authenticated by these card graders. How can you call yourself a professional card grader if you can't tell that a card was altered? And I mean, I think it's a really good point. And I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'm just this is sort of a prelude to Wednesday's conversation. But that's been one of his public arguments is, what good are the grading companies if the grading companies can't even tell that something was altered? And they're supposed to be professionals. They're supposed to be authenticators. So is the fraud the person who altered the card, or is the fraud the company who's claiming to be an expert, but they can't even tell that the card was altered and the card was restored? I think that's a good point. I also think the point of Dave saying, hey, there's 20 of a certain card known to man, and that one was trimmed 30 years ago. I would certainly like to have that before not having one at all. I certainly understand that. So where do I stand? Well, that's not the question. I don't need to share where I stand, do I? I guess where I need to say is, would I be offended? I wouldn't be offended, but I would just like if you took a crayon to the Mona Lisa to try to make it look a little bit better, I would be disappointed. I would be disappointed that we altered this work of art. And if you did something like took a vintage card that shows wear and you altered it or restored it, and then someday in the future, it gets sold without the designation that it was restored, that would bum me out. I think we need to change our perspective. This is Greg's real opinion, which again, you didn't ask for, I'll just give it. Greg's real opinion is the patina on an old, Coca-Cola sign is cool. The patina on an old gas station sign is impossible to replicate and duplicate. Greg thinks the patina on a card is pretty cool. Now, there's two different ways of looking for cards. You can look for a copy that looks untouched. You can look for a copy that looks like it came out of a pack. And that's cool too, that it went all this time and it survived without damage. But it likely means it was put in a book, closed and forgotten, or put in a shoebox and forgotten and tucked away and somebody discovered it. But there's something about that card with the heavily rounded corners and edges and the discoloration around all those fingers that held it. That's also very cool. Like, I could totally get on board with having a bunch of ones and twos, and I have a bunch of ones and twos because they look loved, they look enjoyed, and that's beautiful too. So why are we taking things that look beautiful and trying to erase the love that the card felt and enjoyed for the last 75 years? Why do we have to say, this card from 1950, this 1950 Jackie Robinson card, if only we could somehow erase all of the love that's on it and that shows on it and make it look like it was never seen or loved or touched. How's that make it better? How's that make it better? I think you could make the argument that's taking something away from the card. Now, I'm not... Now people are just, oh, really, Greg, you want ones, you don't want eights and nines? I'm just saying both are beautiful. The 8 and 9 is beautiful for one reason. The 1 and the 2 is beautiful for a different reason. That's what I'm saying.
How much would you say becoming a content creator on YouTube has changed your buying and selling habits in the hobby? What would it be like if you were just a viewer?
So this question made me laugh. Just a viewer? What do you mean just a viewer? we're all participants in this. It's not that, somebody who just sets up their phone, my phone is literally sitting, right now I'm looking at my phone, which is sitting on top of a computer monitor. And I'm just looking at it, talking in a room by myself. That doesn't make me special. I'm just a guy who likes talking about cards. And if you guys keep asking me questions, I'm gonna keep answering them because I think it's enjoyable. So I don't think the guy who records his opinions and puts it on YouTube makes him any different than the person who doesn't do that, but scrolls through and clicks play on some stuff. I understand the point of the question though too. I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to be a pill. I'm just saying, I don't think I'm any different than the person who is got this on their phone right now, or their iPad, or their TV screen, or the computer screen. No different. The only thing that has changed with me since this whole YouTube thing started in late October of 2022, the only thing that has changed is now I know more people in the hobby. And I have a lot of people that I know in the hobby. I have a lot of people, I've got friends in this hobby that I text every day. And before, it was more solitude. It was sort of like, I kind of had an opinion, my dad kind of had an opinion, we'd share our opinions, that was it. And now I have the sphere of influence, the number of people who I talk to, who I get opinions from, who I discuss cards with, is so much bigger that now I have more people giving me thoughts, and I go, yeah, maybe. When I started this channel, 15 months ago, whatever it is, I was a corner guy. Centering was not that important. It was about pack fresh. And then you saw the way I just answered the question. I just answered a question about how I love a card that shows the love on it. And 15 months later, I'm sitting there saying, yeah, I used to be, I wanted it pack fresh, and now I want the card. I don't mind a card that looks loved. That's like a completely different opinion. I try to be very open-minded. I don't think I know everything by any means. And a lot of you have changed my opinion on it. One opinion that I've talked about that I changed my opinion on. I changed my opinion on an instant is when I made a video on cards that I thought were ugly. I said, I don't understand these cards. These are ugly cards. They're not good looking cards. And one of the cards I picked was the 48 leaf Jackie Robinson. I said, this is an ugly card. It's not a good looking card. The 49 leaf, 48 leaf, I know. The 49 Bowman is a much better looking card. The 52 Tops is a much better, all the Jackie Robinsons are better looking than that one. That was my thought at the time. And then somebody in the comments of that video said, you're crazy, you don't get it. You don't get it. And they just said, this card's like an Andy Warhol. This is an Andy Warhol. You're not seeing the art in it. And the light bulb went off, and my opinion changed forever. And now if you were to say, Greg, what is the one attainable grail card that if you could pick any one that you'd most want, I would say the 48, 49 leaf Jackie Robinson. And this is a card I made a video about like a year ago that I thought was ugly. I was wrong. Opinions change. So that's a long explanation to your very simple question. How has my opinion changed? My opinion has changed is that now I have a whole bunch of people who influence my opinions and share counter arguments and counter thoughts that I take seriously, and I've changed a lot of opinions on. Before, it was just me and my dad.
Not sure if you ever collected Kellogg's 3D cards from the 70s. They are prone to cracking, but when not cracked, they are pretty cool. What are your thoughts on them?
Okay, so the 3D Kellogg's cards. First, I know that I have a lot of gray hair, right? I have a lot of gray hair. And, but I'm I came a little bit at the tail end of those 3D Kellogg's cards. So I was born in '79, and those cards were produced a little past that. I do not remember as a kid going to the store and seeing cereal and having those, because my memories of, picking cereals at the grocery store came after that. I 100% remember picking the cereal that had the toy that I wanted the most. 100%. Do they still do toys and cereals? I don't even know if they do that anymore. But I definitely, the determining factor for me on what cereal I chose was the best toy. And I've told you guys before, I was hooked on cards right around 8 years old. So if they were making those in 1987, I certainly would have been buying the Kellogg cereals that had the cards inside. 100%, because you remember they had the little plastic, thing on the outside. You can still sometimes buy them still in the plastic. I like them a lot. To me, they're like nostalgia. I came in a little bit later. Remember Sports Flicks? The cards were called Sports Flicks, and you'd kind of turn them, and they'd have like a couple of images in them. Like, I remember that era of cards. I remember having a Kevin Seltzer Sports Flicks rookie card, and that was like, to me at the time, I was like, that was a pretty cool card. Like, I don't know. I may have even just said his name wrong, but I like anything nostalgia. I used to say, people collect video games, give me a break. I'd love to have a copy of Zelda, a Nintendo copy of Zelda, or a Nintendo copy of, Super Mario Brothers. I would be awesome. That stuff is cool. Sega Genesis, I had the Sega Genesis, and the thought of having a Sega Genesis of Mortal Kombat, or one of the Maddens. I bought Madden every year, Madden for Christmas, and I just played Madden all summer long on Genesis. Like, that would be cool. So yeah, what was the question? I don't even remember. Oh, the Kellogg. I'm getting old, guys. So yeah, nostalgia I'm all about. And I remember seeing those cards, and I like those cards. And the players that generally are on the cards are guys that, were well-known players. And so I just bought some not that long ago, some of the Kellogg's cards. I think they're very cool. I have a Carlton Fisk. I think I have a Nolan Ryan. I've got a few of them. I think they're very cool. They do crack a lot, and I've seen other guys do videos on them and talk about. I know Mangini's talked about this. I think Orlando has talked about this. But you can't go because they curve. Naturally, they curve. If you see a stack of them, they're kind of rounded. And if you try to put them and just straighten them, they're going to crack. So you have to be very careful, like top loader them or slowly start to do it. And I'm not an expert at that, so don't follow my advice. Follow one of their advices, because they've had more experience with it. The ones that I have, that I've bought, thankfully are flattened and not cracked. But even cracked, I still think they're cool. So yeah, long story short, anything nostalgia, anything that reminds me of my childhood, I'm all about it. Those absolutely do, even though I didn't collect them as a kid, because I don't think they were still putting them in cereal boxes as a kid. And if they were, I don't remember it. But I like them very much. For me, I really collect vintage stuff, and then I collect nostalgic stuff. Things that from my childhood I wanted but couldn't have, and now I can. I like that stuff too.
I'm 7 cards away from finishing the 54 top set, and would like to know your thoughts about buying the high-end cards for it. I've seen some decent deals on eBay, but always get nervous to buy from there because it's just a 2D image.
I think this is a great question, because a lot of us buy a lot of our cards online. And it's tough to buy cards online. And I'll show you guys pictures. I'll say, oh, look at these 2 cards. Which one do you like more? And people go, that you can't really tell because it's 2D, it's not 3D. You can't see the surface. You can't see if there's a wrinkle or a dent or an imperfection. You can just kind of see the centering. You can kind of see the corners. You can kind of see the color, but then people enhance the color. So here are a few thoughts on that based on your question. Number one, know what the PSA and SGC grading standards say, okay? If you look on PSA's website right now, and you could do the same thing for SGC. If you look on PSA's website, a card that's a 4, okay, can have a light surface wrinkle. It's in their grading standards. So if you see a card that looks amazing, but it's a 4, it's possible that there's a light surface wrinkle. But if you look at the grading standards and you look at a 5 does not allow there to be a crease. So if you see a card online and you're like, man, this thing looks sweet, but I can't see the surface. I can't see if there's a crease, right? But it's a 5. But the corners look pretty good. The centering looks pretty good. The color looks okay. Well, that's your cue of there's no surface wrinkle, because otherwise it couldn't qualify for a 5 based on their standards. So knowing their standards, and SGCs are a little bit different. I would have to look, but I can't remember if SGC, a 3.5 allows a crease and a 4 doesn't, or a 4 does a surface wrinkle, or a 4 does and a 4.5 doesn't. But there's a little difference there between SGC and PSA and what's allowed. That's something, if that would potentially bother you, that would be something to know when you're looking at it. Now, if you're looking at a card that's a 2, you have to assume that there's a wrinkle in it. You might be pleasantly surprised that there's not. Maybe there's some other sort of imperfection. But so knowing the grading standards is super important. Now, here's the other thing. And this, I mentioned this a month or 2 ago on my channel, and not a lot of people mentioned it, but my dad came back and said, man, that was really smart. And I was like, thanks, Dad. But he said, my tip was this: when I see a card with a really bad picture, okay, a really bad picture on the listing, let's say it's an SGC 5, and it has a horrible picture. I'm like, I can't really tell. I can't really see the color very well. I can't really see the surface very well. They didn't show a picture of the back. I want to see the back. Maybe the back's off center some, and that would bother me. Maybe there's a little stain or a mark on the back that would bother me. This guy made a bad scan, a bad picture in the listing. See, most people look at that and they get frustrated and they just go, I'm not interested. I see that as an opportunity. See, the card that I bought, I just on Sunday, I shared a video about my Jackie Robinson, 1955 Jackie Robinson that I picked up, and I'm really excited to have the card. The card had a bad scan. So now you're going, well, is it really a nice 4 or is it not? Because again, in my opinion, not all 4s are created equal. So you know what I did? I went up to the serial number and I looked it up on PSA's database. Now, because the serial number was new enough, since they started putting images of all of the pictures of all of the grades, the card is on PSA's database, the picture. So I type in the code, the serial number, into their database, and there is a high resolution picture of the card. And I'm like, this is a really nice card. The picture was awful. The picture kind of concerned me, but the picture here is beautiful. It's a beautiful card. I got to go buy it. And SGC, not all that long ago, started doing the same. So you can type in the serial number and you can get a high resolution image of the card. And so whenever I buy a card that's a newer serial number, and I'm thinking about buying it, and it's more than, $50, the very first thing I do is I go to either SGC's database or PSA's database and I look up the high resolution scan. You can see a lot on a high resolution scan, and it's front and back. So when you see that card and you go, man, I was kind of looking for a 1960 mantle in like the 2, 3, 4 range, and this is a 3 and it looks really nice, but I can't really tell because the image is a little bit blurry or a little bit distant or at a weird angle, but it's a newer scan. Look it up. Go to PSA or SGC, type in the serial number, pull open the card, and see how nice it really is. That's my advice. I think that's pretty good. I think that's pretty good advice. Well, it's what I do. So the advice that I give is I try to just tell everyone, well, this is what I do, so this is what I recommend you do. So that's my thought. That's my take. That's my suggestion. Now, the other piece of it is look to see if there is like a 15-day, return policy, because a lot of the big dealers have return policies. So you go, man, I really like the looks of this 1957 Sandy Koufax card, and the resolution looks pretty good. I don't really see anything bad. And you go, well, it's a $300 card. So, and then you look and you go, oh, they have a return policy. Returns within 30 days. I've returned cards before. They have a return policy, then you're not really out much. If you think you're going to like it, buy it. You get it, you hate it, return it. So the return policy is the other thing I look at. So don't prevent yourself from buying on eBay just because you're not really sure what you're getting. Look at the serial number, look at the scan on the websites, look for return policies. That's my advice.
Why are so many teachers in the hobby? Are you active with your school or students in the hobby?
All right, Ziggy. Ziggy asked a question. Now, Ziggy's been around for a while, has a pretty well-known channel. If you've not checked out Ziggy's website, do that. He's kind of a hobby watchdog and, looking out for consumer advocate kind of guy. So check out his channel. He's commonly in a lot of the live chats and stuff. So Ziggy, thank you for asking the question. Now, why are teachers so heavy into collecting? I think that there might be a few reasons. It is interesting, and I don't think there's a ton. I mean, I'm on a teaching staff of 120 teachers. I'm at a huge high school. We have about 2,700 students. We have about 120 teachers. I'm not aware of another teacher on my site that collects cards. So it does feel like in the YouTube verse, there are a fair amount of teachers. And maybe that's because the teachers they don't mind getting up in front of people and talking and sharing opinions and stuff, because that's kind of what we do. So that could be part of it. It does at times seem like when I'm meeting people at shows and stuff that I'm not the only teacher. So, I do think that you're right, that there is a little bit more teachers in the community. There are a little bit more teachers in the community than most professions. So why would that be? I think there's a couple things. Number one, I think that most people that are teachers enjoy learning. I think that we enjoy learning. Some people they're not that interested in learning things. And some of you go, what are you talking about? Everyone likes to learn. No, not everybody likes to learn. A lot of people are just complacent with where things are at. Teachers tend to read, they tend to inquire, they tend to ask questions, they tend to like to learn. So because of that, I think that we're kind of drawn to it. Another piece of it is obviously the time off. Like, a lot of people will work, in a 52-week year, they'll work 50 weeks. They'll have like 2 weeks of vacation. Teachers work 40 weeks. So that means we have 12 weeks off. Having 12 weeks off tends to give us a little bit more time for hobbies. So yeah, if you go to in the summer and you go to the golf course and you go to the driving range and you ask, hey, what do you do for a living? There's probably going to be a fair amount of teachers there. You go to a card show over the summer and then, yeah, there's a fair amount of teachers there. So I think the fact that we have a little bit more hobby time, and I think the fact that teachers by nature tend to want to inquire and investigate things, Not that other people don't, but just by nature, teachers are more wired that direction, I think is probably part of it as well. As far as do I have anything at my school set up? I don't. If I thought there was a demand for it at my school, I would absolutely do it. I teach high school, and a lot of collectors out there, a lot of us out there in the hobby world go, when did I start kind of slowing down my collecting? And it would be, freshman year, or when I got a car, so this is kind of the age that kids start to kind of check out of those sorts of things, unfortunately. I don't have any students right now that I know are actively in the hobby. I would be more than happy to try to set something like that up. If I was an elementary school teacher, which I'm not, I'm a high school teacher, I would definitely try to set something like that up, because a lot of those kids are really into their sports. They're really into baseball and football and soccer and softball and all that kind of stuff. I think that those kids would probably be more, into that idea. But being a high school teacher, where I'm at, it doesn't seem like there's a demand. But if I ever had a student come to me who was really into cards and said, hey, there's a bunch of us that collect, let's start a club, I would totally be down for that. I would totally be down for it. But it doesn't feel like that's the case. It feels like I'm in the age range where kids start to leave the hobby before potentially coming back. And, which brings the question, well, why don't you start the club to keep them in the hobby and keep them from leaving the hobby? And it's like, yeah, that's a good point. But again, it's only a club if it's somebody besides just me sitting in the room looking at cards. So I definitely would be willing, but it doesn't feel like at the moment that demand is there, at least at my school and this age at this moment. But I do appreciate the question. So that was a lot. Some of my questions I ran long. Sorry, it's just how I am. I'm long-winded. It's just part of the deal. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask for an upcoming episode, please don't hesitate. Down below in the comments, just simply type your question. Every week I look forward to going through the comments and seeing what questions are out there and giving my opinion. And that's all this is. So 5 great questions. Appreciate everybody watching. Type those questions down below.